Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom or Tom. How's it going?
Well, Tony, we get to make some WWE references on today's show, so I'm sure you're going to be happy, even though it does involve, unfortunately, a player from Ohio State hitting the transfer portal.
Yes, Miles Walker, redshirt freshman offensive lineman, hitting the transfer portal. And Tom, it's kind of insulting that you would think that I am the person who would be making the WWE analogies and references when that is your milieu. That is who you generally talk about. And then you kind of pass it off like, I know you just wanted, I just did that for you. Even though, like, if you pan around your room, there's probably a fat head of like Bruno Sammartino, and because he owned Madison Square Garden, and you're a New York boy, and you'd have I don't know, like Tito Santana on the other wall, the Intercontinental champ. Yes, Tom, we know, longtime Intercontinental champ until that evil dastardly honky tonk man and the Macho Man, all those people started taking the belt from him. Anyway, enough of your WWE and WWF references, Tom. I'm sick of it.
All right, so let's talk about Miles Walker. Tony, from the mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. He was a three-star prospect, offensive line prospect in the class of 2023. One of those guys that was a camp offer, came in and was someone who did not have, sometimes you bring in the guys who are five-star guys who are like, boy, you just pencil that guy in as a starter next year. Miles Walker came in as much more of there's some raw material to work with there. We'll see what it looks like. He played for the Brunswick School, which is a private school in Greenwich. And I grew up out there, not in Greenwich. I was not in the Greenwich tax bracket of things, but I am familiar with Connecticut high school football, Connecticut prep high school football. It's not Ohio high school football. Let's just leave it at that. You don't see a lot of five-star guys coming out of the state of Connecticut. And when they do, it's like, it's that one guy and that's it. And so that was always going to be a little bit of a big jump for him, but you kind of had the raw material, you kind of had the size. And so it was like, yeah, sure, give it a shot, see what it looks like. But unfortunately for Miles Walker, he was hurt a bunch last year. He came in, he had his arm in a sling for pretty much all season. I think it might've been a shoulder injury. I don't recall off the top of my head, but he had his arm in a sling for pretty much his whole first year. And that's a year when there's the physical development that first year is so important for an offensive lineman. And he really missed out on a lot of that. And so coming into someone who was a little bit more of a project or a little more of a lottery ticket, however you want to sort of look at it, you really couldn't afford to fall behind like that. And it feels like that might have just been a little too much for him to overcome.
Yeah, it was always going to be a step up in competition. And if you were not able to take part in that step up initially, then you're going to be really against the eight ball. And then the next class comes in and you're even more against it. And we saw this year where younger guys, Ian Moore had stepped in at right tackle as one of the backup right tackles. And we never, all of the practices that we get to see in the preseason and in the spring, I don't recall ever seeing Miles Walker anything other than third or fourth in line at, I think, right tackle. I don't know. I don't even know if I've ever seen him at left tackle, frankly. So this was a guy that was always on the outskirts and has not played a snap yet in his 2 years at Ohio State. Last year, Tom said, he was injured. This year, he's not even approached playing time from anything we've seen. Ian Moore played in 3 games this year. George Fitzpatrick, backup left tackle, has played in a bunch of games, played in every game this year. Most, like 8 or 10 games, 8 or 9 games on offense. So like they're getting some backups in there, and Miles Walker has not been one of them. Even Toby Wilson plays a different position, but he's a walk-on and, 4th-year guy. Maybe a 5th-year guy at this point, but he's played in some games. And Miles Walker's not even special teams. So this one is the math is very, very easy on this one. And you spend 2 years and you see if you can play here. And if you haven't played here, that's a pretty good indication that if you want to continue playing, you're going to have to take a step down and find something there. And, he was the number 33 tackle in the 2023 class. He had offers according to 24/7 of Texas A&M, Duke, Vanderbilt, Boston College, things like that. And this one was, as you said, Tom, we call it a reach, or you call it a developmental offer. Sometimes that's DeJuan Jones and Pat Elflein. Sometimes it ends up being, we see it all the time, like you're not going to hit on all of your offensive linemen, no matter how hard you try. But you look at the frame, the athleticism. It's like, okay, there's something there. Can we get what we need out of it? And so Miles Walker will head off. It won't impact the depth chart because he's not yet been on there. It won't impact special teams or any placements because he's not been there either. What it does kind of do is it impacts the numbers overall and the practice bodies and the scout team bodies. And they're already going to be, even before any transfers, they were going to be about one under what they were this year for next year in terms of, I think this past year they had there, this current year, it's still ongoing. I think they had 16 guys, and then next year projects to about 15, and now 14 with Miles Walker leaving. And really, there's no guarantee that that's the only guy who's leaving, but it's also not. They're also going to be bringing in more guys. They're going to have to hit the portal hard. And we already saw Josh Thompson from Northwestern is scheduled to visit for Friday, so that would be one. He's a versatile guy, can start at pretty much anywhere on the offensive line and has started almost everywhere on the offensive line and was an honorable mention All Big Ten guy. So, that's something that bears watching. But so the fifth Buckeye into the portal now, because you've got Gabe Powers, you got the two receivers, and you got Devin Brown, and then, of course, Miles Walker. And we don't know if he's going to stick around. Ryan Day talked about it's a case-by-case basis on who wants to stick around and play out the string and see if they can win a national title. Miles Walker may do that. It won't, like I said, it's not going to impact the depth chart or anything like that. So if he chooses to or not, this is one where Ryan Day is probably like, stay if you want, go if you want, whatever.
Yeah, and he's someone who, and I mentioned the Brunswick School earlier, just in terms of the football program, that's a really prestigious prep school. That is not a place that you get in if you have iffy grades. And you mentioned some of the other places he had offers from, and it was Vanderbilt and Duke and Boston College. Those are places that are not easy to get into. So he's someone who probably has some really intriguing opportunities ahead, Miles Walker, because you could go get a degree somewhere real, somewhere that churns out folks who make a good bit of money on. I think he was a finance major, if I remember correctly, Walker. But you could probably get, if you can get a spot with Bill O'Brien at BC, that would be a nice landing spot. I think he could potentially be a starter if he want. What do you want to do? Do you want to go somewhere that's academically prestigious? Do you want to go somewhere where you can start? Because UMass is basically starting over. I bet he could start at UMass without much issue. I bet he could go start for Jim Mora at UConn. So definitely some options for Miles Walker. But Ohio State, you got to remember, they only took 3 offensive linemen in this recruiting class. That's going to be trying to catch up with numbers. Generally, you're going to see a couple linemen in the portal just because every season from every school, just because it's such a developmental and projection kind of position. And a lot of times guys don't hit those projections. Not every 3-star offensive lineman turns into Pat Elflein, just like not every 3-star defensive tackle turns into Devon Hamilton. Like every once in a while one does, and you remember them because it doesn't happen very often. So you end up with a lot of guys from every program in the country in the offensive line room hitting the portal every year. So, you figure there's probably another 1 or 2 probably from Ohio State, just on the balance of probability. And so you're really going to have to hit the portal hard to bring in some extra talent, because you're already losing Josh Simmons. He's headed off to the NFL. Donovan Jackson is out of eligibility. Josh Fryer, I think, is out of eligibility. So you've really got to find a whole new offensive line. And the last couple of classes have been a little bit thin, and they didn't get David Sanders this year. So there is definitely some heavy lifting to do in the portal this offseason for Ohio State, because even if you add another offensive line prospect to the class of 2025 recruiting class, that's not a spot where you come in and step on campus and just start day one. So you're going to have to go find some immediate help, because they have bodies there. They have people that you've sort of seen and you've heard about, but you're not going to hit on all of them. That's just not how the offensive line works, and you need depth there anyway. So this is probably like a 3 or maybe 4 guy offensive line portal class. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you got to get whoever will join. And also with the 105-man roster, and these can all be scholarships, you need to expand the rooms for some of these position groups. And they did last week. Youngstown Ursuline offensive lineman Philip Bowser, who's not highly rated anywhere. He's the 3-star and 24/7. He's a 2025 guy from, as I said, Youngstown. The number 195 interior offensive lineman in the class, the number 112 player in Ohio, tweeted out that Ohio State had offered. And this was, I think he's previously committed to Marshall. He has not signed anywhere yet. So this could be another guy that they add to the class. This would be what you would expect, where maybe that's normally a preferred walk-on. Now it can be a scholarship if they want to do it, but also they need guys. And so we've seen plenty of Ohio offensive linemen go somewhere and grow and become something. I mean, the same with the state of Michigan, where you got some of these slow developers, late bloomers that a year or two later with some focus become something. So we'll see if what this class ends up being. But yeah, they've got to bring in a tackle and many things like that on the portal. I think they feel good about the guards. And if there's another center out there like Seth McLaughlin, if Remington finalist, yeah, don't worry about relying on Josh Padilla or Carson Hinsman. Make the room better, because if you're going to just, you know what, let's just see, man, can't afford to let's just see anymore. You got to go and make it happen. But that's what everybody's trying to do. And as I keep saying, you can't just go pick an offensive lineman off the shelf. Everybody's there fighting for that same produce. So there you go. Miles Walker off to the portal. Not a huge surprise, fits the profile that we always talk about. And, so Ohio State will have to fill his spot, and I'm sure they'll be able to do it. So there you go. Hit the thumbs up before you go. If you're watching on YouTube, we would appreciate that. Hit the bell to be notified, because we've got all kinds of videos like these dropping quite a bit now. So, and of course, we'll be going live and talking plenty of Tennessee and things of that nature here on the channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. And of course, talking about the game and recruiting and the portal here, the comings and goings on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So tune in there as well. Join up, $4.99 for the first month. Would love to see you there. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.